3. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Real Management Talk with LJ and Jocelyn. We're so excited to see you this week, and boy, do we have something special for you this week. Hey, LJ, how you doing?
Hello, Jocelyn. So happy to see you, my friend. You look amazing. Very refreshed.
You too. So,
thanks.
How's the week been going? Good?
It's actually been quite interesting. A lot of good movement, but I think that, we're on the precipice of a paradigmatic shift, and discomfort is something that I'm learning to not only tolerate, but accept. And that's saying a lot for me because I tend to pride myself on being a rather regimented person, having, habits that I think have produced me good results, and I just kind of stick with them because it helps me feel like I have a more predictable sort of day. But discomfort has been the new norm, and I think we've got a huge paradigmatic shift that is taking place right now that's fundamentally changing the way that we interact with everything. So how about you?
Well, I'm settled as well as one can be. Not everything's unpacked, but hey, we've made it to the other end with this move, so that's a good thing. I miss not being
Awesome.
in the same spot with you, but here we are. So, but at least we get to talk to each other like we normally do, and weekly see each other on the video, so that's good, right?
That's right.
Hey, listen, so I've got something, and with your shift, it kind of works perfectly into something that I wanted to talk to you about today, because this is something that keeps coming up, and it has to do with boards, and boards of directors, but in particular, different types of board members that can tell you whether you're on the board, or even if you're the ED, that maybe there's an issue that we have to solve. Okay, so Joan Garry, who I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she has some fabulous descriptions of problem board members that I thought I'd run past you and get your thoughts on these board members, right? Because boards is something that we don't talk about a lot. I mean, you and I talk about them, but in general, and whether it's a nonprofit board, or it's a corporate board, or it's a type of board that you've put together to help you run your business, even a group of advisors, you can find these types of folks, right?
Right.
That might not be good fits. And so I was thinking about it, and this week I've had a couple of conversations with folks, so I was kind of interested on your take about it. So I'm going to tell you, so the one that's the most interesting to me that she talks about, though, is she calls them the Autocrat. So they're the person that they have appeal to board members who are on the board, but it's people want to be on the board just because that person's on the board. They're not really interested in your organization. So you're setting up so there's two things set up, but they're also the person that's like the most critical, and they want to see everything before it goes out. And they will have their definite opinion about things, and they'll not only tell other board members what they think they should be doing, but they will micromanage the ED or other staff as well when it's not their place. Right? So let's talk about that, dealing with that type of board member.
The Autocrat.
The Autocrat, as Joan calls it.
I would say that the Autocrat is more common, and I think should be more regularly accepted. on, you know, your typical board of directors. And the reason why I say that is because the autocrat tends to be what we would think of as the organization's champion, or the entrepreneur, the true entrepreneur of the organization, right? The autocrat has a very important function to the organization's success, but it also has a very important function to the organization's sustainability. Iconoclastic, I mean, this sort of, and I think we see it more so today than ever before. You know, when you look on social media, everything is very egocentric. Everything is very narcissistic. And I think that that is as we think about the paradigmatic shift, I think part of the paradigmatic shift is thinking about how social media is requiring all of us to get visible and stay visible, right? And part of getting visible and staying visible means that you really have to take on more of those type A personality traits. It also requires you to recognize that people are eagerly looking to be led. And because they're so eagerly looking to be led reliably by people, by individuals, by leaders who they consider to be reliable, who they consider to be careful in terms of, like, you know, what type of information they espouse, people that they consider to be champions of different causes, champions of different ways of life, right? Because people are so eager for that sort of leadership, we create these monsters that become these autocrats on these board of directors, and we also perpetuate them, right? Because we almost we support them so much by keeping them on these boards and by allowing them to espouse this toxicity that they always espouse. You know, things like micromanagement, things like a lack of empathy, a lack of compassion, a lack of kindness. What a lot of people like to say, oh, they just keep it real. You know, they call it as it is. Do they? Or are they just sort of, you know, trying to keep drama circulating and stirred up? Some people, you know, thrive on these sort of really toxic environments because when they create these toxic environments, especially the autocratic director on the board of directors, the autocratic director needs to feel like they're needed. And you don't feel needed when things are just going well and everybody's happy. You feel needed when you create problems that only you can solve. You know, that's really the autocratic leader. But I think that in most nonprofits, especially, we see the perpetuation of autocratic leaders really that I think comes out of necessity, because I think that people think that in order to get visible and stay visible, you've got to be controversial, but you've also got to want to keep up a degree of mess. What do you think?
Well, I agree with you that there are definitely people who want to keep up a degree of mess. And I think that, you know, Joan's talking about it in her guide to nonprofit leadership, in Joan Garry's guide to nonprofit leadership. And, you know, she's talking about that the autocrats also, the first to find typos, say in your annual report before saying a single good word about the extraordinary work, to quote her. So I want to give proper quotes. This is what I'm referring to. And no, this is just me talking about a piece that I read in a book. But having said that, I think to your point though, the autocrat is a necessary component in just about every organization. Now, maybe not 100% that somebody's the autocrat, because that can create problems. But I think that it's 100% necessary in the sense that sometimes things get missed. And that person, as crazy as they might drive you, either as a board member or a staff member or whatever, a lot of times they're doing it out of the goodness of their heart. They're not even seeing what they're doing. They're doing it, as you say, from a place of need, and how can I, and sometimes they don't even realize the chaos that they're creating. See, I don't think that they actually do. I do think that sometimes they can be critical, but then when I look at that personality type, I'm like, but which one of us can't be critical? Because we can all be critical about different things. And you know how you were talking about, we're going through a shift. We are most definitely going through a shift. Like, it started earlier this year when everything, and we're all like, whoa. Now we're kind of in the middle of it. We can see the shift. We don't all know where it's going, but we know that strong organizations need strong people. Now, they do need people, and one of the things that I've seen from working with boards of directors for how many years I've worked with them, and I've worked with elected boards, I've worked with volunteer boards, I've worked with, you name it, I think I've worked with them. One of the things that we really see, though, is that a lot of times boards don't have the right people on them and together. Earlier this week, I talked with a prospective client, for instance, who was talking about her board, startup business, talking about the board, and about how the board had been made up on the founding of the company. And now, and this is a for-profit company, but kind of now where the board is and kind of what's happened, because sometimes, especially when we're founding a company, whether it's nonprofit or for-profit, but especially on nonprofit boards, a lot of times the people that are initially on the board, they're either friends, their family, or they're only 1 or 2 steps removed from the founder. And they have a tendency to say yes and not be the right people. And then you start getting the right people in, and then these folks are fighting. And I think sometimes, quite honestly, I think sometimes we give board members a bad rap. I mean, how many times have you heard this thing, you know as well as I do, that, you know, I've gone to work for or gone in as a consultant with various nonprofits, and the very first thing I hear is complaints about the board. And a lot of times it's because the staff, including the EDs, never even gotten to know the board members. And the boards complain about the staff because it's the same thing. They've never gotten to know. They really haven't formed a relationship.
Right.
But, you know, one of the things is that, and Joan's repeating this too in the book, which is what I've always said to people, is you got to look at your board and start figuring out, you know, who do you need, and can they get along with everybody, and can they work together, and do they just want to have it on their resume as a check mark for, hey, I'm serving, or do they really care about the organization? And so I was thinking about that all week, just based on the conversations I had. And then I was reading through this because I was doing some research on a couple of different things, and I came across this particular chapter, and I thought, you know, this is right about this type of temperament with this type of person. But I think sometimes we throw the person that we consider as the autocrat under the bus.
Yeah.
Too fast, to your point.
Because I think that the autocrat, so, I mean, it's like you said, and you said it perfectly. The reality is that, you know, through adversity is how we succeed, or even have the gusto to want to succeed, right? You have to have adversity, really, to force you to be accountable, you know, to really live up to whatever it is that you say you want to be able to do. You've got to come across some sort of adversity, right? That's just how it works. But the thing is that with the Autocrat, you know, we're trying to, it really, like you said, it depends on the POV. You know, who's looking at the Autocrat? Is it the board chair that's looking at the Autocrat and saying, you know, you're awesome. You know, you're a cheerleader for the organization. You know, you call it out when it needs to be called out. We appreciate that. Or is it, like you said, the ED or the CEO or the president who's like, listen, man, you're riding my back about stuff that you don't even understand. You know, you're giving me a hard time about, for example, this budget presentation, because you don't understand the difference between our organizational budgets and our program budgets, right? You don't understand that for us, fundraising expenses are things that we need to have so that we can evidence that we are not only actively seeking other revenue streams to our grantors, but that we're also very intentional about sustaining this organization beyond where it is today, right? And so the CEO, the president, the executive director is going to have that perspective. They're going to understand why certain things are the way that they are. While the Autocrat on the board of directors, like you said, they don't know the ED that well. They don't know the staff really, probably at all. Probably never met them, most of them, outside the ED. And, you know, maybe doesn't even care to get to know those staff members. You know, that's what you see a lot too. And vice versa from the staff. You know, sometimes they're so intimidated that, you know, even, you know, sending a note or showing up to a board meeting is something that's way beyond, you know, their scope of desire. You know, they're like, nope, that's not even on a bucket list, right? So, I mean, so there's all these power dynamics at play that I don't think enough of us talk about. And nowadays, you know, with everything, it feels so superficial. Everything is so superficial, and everything is just so personal. You know, it's really difficult to you know, even with COVID, with the pandemic, you know, us having to meet virtually, it's just before that, it was already really difficult to just bring people in the same room and, you know, have folks just care enough to get to know the person that's sitting next to them. That was already a struggle before COVID-19. Now everything's virtual and it's, come on, you know. So it takes, like you said, for us to have strong leadership. And when we say strong leadership, we're talking about having individuals who model the type of organizational culture, the type of the embodiment of what you as a leader of that organization would consider to be an attitude of abundance or a mindset of abundance, and some behavior that you would want your staff, your volunteers, your other board of directors, that behavior that you want them to model. Mm-hmm. And does the Autocrat have that? You know, and that's what it comes down to. That's the bottom line. Does the Autocrat have the type of behavior or exhibit the type of behavior that you want to be modeled? And if the answer to the question is no, then, you know, obviously you need to address why the Autocrat is able to go on the way that he or she has been allowed to go on, while other people have been not given that same, you know, privilege to be who they are and to, you know, be controversial and keep up mess stirred, right? So that's, I mean, you're right on point. And I think, again, the reality is that, you know, as you said, people are going to watch this and they're going to say, you know what, my board of directors is horrible. You know, they're going to say a lot of the same things, not really understanding, you know, from the staff to the board, and then from the board to the staff perspective, there's so many moving parts to getting the day-to-day done versus overseeing and governing that day-to-day. There's so many moving parts that it doesn't matter what position you're sitting in, you have to give the person that's doing the work, give them the opportunity to explain to you what it is that they do, why they do it the way that they do it, and why they think that it's good or that it's bad, or if they need support. Have the conversation, at least give people the benefit of the doubt before, like you said, you throw them under the bus. You know, at least reach out to figure out if you can have a meeting and talk with them and figure out why they do the things that they do. People don't even do that anymore. We don't even have people that want to reach out. You're, instead of talking directly to the person that you got a problem with, you want to talk around them. That's toxic. That's toxic behavior. And I see it all the time. Oh, LJ, go talk. No, I'm not delivering your message. You need to have that conversation with the person that you have if it's a congratulations, tell them, call them. If it's a problem that you have, tell them, call them. Do that on your own. That's the type of respect that you would want someone to give you. So pay that respect forward, right?
Right. No, you're totally right. And unfortunately, when we see the toxicness, and unfortunately we do see that in a lot of nonprofits in particular, you can see it in others, but the nonprofit world, a lot of times, I hate to say it, but I'm going to say it. A lot of times the nonprofit world is extremely toxic. You have staffs and stuff that are trying to do their best to serve whatever community that nonprofit was set up to serve, but the board and the overall leadership becomes toxic, and it just starts to everything, and that affects attrition. It affects retention, it affects donations, it affects recruiting good board members, because the nonprofit world can be really, really tiny, even in a huge country, and word gets around. So, I think that we'll probably talk a lot more about boards and different types of board members, but I thought that, her description, Joan's description of this one type of board member that she calls the autocrat is, it is a type of board member that we often do see, even in our work now with our firms. We do unfortunately see that type of board member, but a lot of times you can figure out what does that board member really want, or what are they really trying to get at, and get them plugged into the right place where they're very effective. And I think that that's the thing that's so important. But for years, I heard complaints about board members and this and that and the other thing. And I'm like, get to know your board. That's the thing. Don't just assume things. So it's something that might seem like nitpicking, maybe in some respects it is, but it might not be meant in the way that you're taking it, though, either. So the best thing is to go talk to that person and find out, or if you're the ED, talk to the board as a whole. Even if it's not your evaluation time, assuming they're doing an evaluation, that's a whole different episode. But at any rate.
About that.
Yeah, well, we have a whole different take on that one. That's probably a day-long workshop we can do on that one. But yeah, so this is.
We got to take inventory. I think not enough of our leaders understand, and we talked about this in our previous episode, part of succession planning and really thinking seriously about transitions really means that you need to be taking inventory. You got to be taking inventory of personalities, of strengths, of weaknesses, of like Jocelyn is saying, you need to get clear on people's intentions. Are they there because they've got a business and this is something that helps to further their professional interest? And that's okay. We're not disparaging people for, the real reason why they are involved in something. Everyone's got an agenda. And I think, that's part of being intentional and being authentic, is just recognizing the facts that, everyone's going to have a reason for being there. As a leader, you just need to get clear on what that reason, and use it towards the organization's advantage. And there's a lot of egocentrism involved naturally in all of these leadership positions and all the politics that come with it. And it's hard work. It's difficult being on a board of directors. Even if it's a rubber stamp board, it's still difficult. It takes a lot of time, emotionally. It takes a lot of time away from your professional life. You know, you're going to be thinking about some decisions, especially on these high profile boards. You know, like Jocelyn and I have sat on several high profile boards. The decisions that we make a lot of times can mean life or death for some of the people that we were serving. And that's not easy. It's not easy to make decisions. There's a lot of people who can criticize, and if I were in that situation, I would have done this. If you haven't been in that situation, you have no idea the pressure. You never have enough information to make a decision that you are really very comfortable with. For the most part, you just go with what you think you know, and you go with, again, those reliable characters. You know, we're going to always have people that we believe in that sit on those boards, and or if they're not on the board, then they're going to be our staff, and we believe in them, and we believe in their visions. And so sometimes we just defer to them and their preferences because, you know, we want to support the people who do the great work of supporting the community that which we are formed to serve. So you just got to think about the levels and the layers. There's a lot of things in action when board directors are having to make some very tough decisions. So, you know, there's, you know, thinking about the types of personalities that you have on the board is one thing, and then thinking about the actual process of coming to making decisions is a whole other thing. And, you know, like Jocelyn, like you said, give people the space to make mistakes, but also confront people first before sort of just jumping to these, you know, sort of conclusions about the type of people that they are based on the decisions that they've made. Give them a chance, understand, try to walk in their shoes, because you got to remember too, a lot of us, because we have very different lived experiences, you know, because of the bodies that we're in, because of the areas of town that we live in, because of the age that we are. I mean, there's so many different components. People are going to, based on those lived experiences, have very different perspectives. And, you know, like Jocelyn said, you know, the assumptions, do not carry those assumptions. You know, go and get the clarity and really, really try to cut through all of the miscommunications. That's the only way for us to really build successful, strong organizations with very strong leadership.
Right. And on that note, we're going to wrap up this week's episode. So, yes. So, guys, we thank you so much again for joining us. If you would like to know about advertising, sponsorship opportunities, drop us a comment so that we can get in touch with you, or email guy@realmanagementtalk.com, and someone will get back to you to let you know about that. And we look forward to seeing you on our next episode. Bye all.
Bye.